Around a few months ago, I decided I wanted to take on the task of attempting to obtain a Fire Sprite in Flight Rising. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, Flight Rising is a browser based pet site game centered around dragons where you can collect, breed, raise a variety of different dragons. And in the game, you can get little pets for your dragons called familiars. And one of the familiars is named Fire Sprite, which was a holiday familiar that was released during the first ever Flame Forgers Festival, which is like the Fireflight's yearly holiday that they have. The Fire Sprite was available for 1 week during that first Flame Forgers Festival back in 2013. And then it was retired and never seen again. Like, there was no. If you were not on the website during that week, you were very unlikely to get a Fire Sprite unless you got very, very, very lucky. They have, on Flight Rising, there is a mini game called Ramsey's Raffle Roulette, where sometimes they would put Fire Sprites in the pool of potential prizes you can get. But, like, unless you were around in 2013 during that very specific week, you probably did not get a Fire Sprite unless you were trading with other players who were there. And thus, since I wanted a Fire Sprite, and since I wasn't going to be time traveling, nor was I probably going to be winning Ramsey's Raffle Roulette, I was going to have to save up enough money to buy this item from a player who already had it, because there was going to be no way of obtaining a Fire Sprite through, like, regular gameplay. Luckily, Flight Rising makes trading with players very easy through a feature called the Auction House, where people can list their items on the auction house for a price, and you can just buy it straight there without having to, like, contact anyone. So I checked the auction house for a Fire Sprite to see how much it is that it's going for, how much I'm going to be, having to save, and it's $750 worth of in-game currency. So I had a lot of saving to do. My first few months of this journey was relatively straightforward. I wasn't 100% sure what I had to do to obtain a Fire Sprite other than just playing Glimmer and Gloom every single day and storing all of the currency I would receive from the game. I would just go on every single day. I'd do Glimmer and Gloom. I would do the scavenging. I would bond with the familiars, and then any treasure at all I got from any of those tasks would just be shoved into my vault, which was probably the hardest part, because then I had to forget the treasure existed, because, there were other projects and dragons I wanted to, like, be working on, but I also really want Fire Sprite, and my attitude is that the price of Fire Sprite is only going to go up. The price of my other dragon projects, they weren't going to be changing. The price to get a Cyrus breed change scroll, that wasn't going to be changing anytime soon, but Fire Sprite was going to probably only just keep inflating in price, so I had to kind of just shove my treasure into the vault and forget about it. Well, kind of. There was one other step to this that was kind of annoying that I haven't brought up yet, and it's that Fire Sprite was not being sold for treasure, which is like the regular currency used on Flight Rising. Fire Sprite was being sold for gems. So I had to take all of the treasure I was getting and somehow convert it to gems. Now, at first, this might sound like an easy process, because on Flight Rising, there's a pretty active forum where people are selling and trading one currency for the other currency. However, as someone who has attempted using that forum before, I find it's a very slow and tedious process to find somebody who is looking to buy treasure with their gems. Usually it's the other way around. People want to buy gems with their treasure, which means the second there was someone who was selling their gems for treasure, they would like run out of stock instantly. The second somebody was like, hey, I have gems, I want to buy your treasure, it would all be gone by the time I could get to the thread. So attempting to convert my money that way, it just was not a viable option to do it. So instead, my solution was that I would, instead of trying to trade the treasure for gems, I would try to buy an item for treasure that would be purchased very quickly on the auction house. And my item of choice was the Vial of Elemental Cite. It is an item that is usually sold for 500,000 treasure that I could then plop on the auction house and get around 500 gems. Kind of. The thing is that the price of the item to buy it was usually more pricey in treasure than gems. You were not getting as many gems as you were buying it. So every single time I bought this item, I was essentially losing a little bit of money, which kind of sucked, but I tried to look at it as like a speed fund, essentially, because I knew that if I went through the process of doing the form, it was going to take me forever. So I tried to look at it as I was just paying for the time to get this done as quickly as possible. Only thing I would change is if I could go back, I probably would have done this process with unhatched nocturne eggs, because unhatched nocturne eggs tend to sell quicker, and I've noticed that like the price difference between buying it with treasure and buying it with gems is not as steep as the Vial of Elemental Cite, but you live and learn. I can't go back now. So anyway, despite this being the like most consistent part of this process that I would do to get Fire Sprite, it only net me around like I'd say 10,000 gems in total, which great. However, it was not going to be nearly enough to get a Fire Sprite. 10,000 gems is like $100 worth of Flight Rising in-game money, and to get Fire Sprite, I would need like 750, maybe a little less, because I saw some people were selling it for like 550, so I was like, oh hey, if I can like get it down to 550, I might be able to make an offer, but like it still was just like a fraction of what I would need to get this item. I was nowhere close to done. So since doing Glimmer and Gloom, while it was working, it was definitely helping with me reaching my goal, I was trying to find other things that I had that I could sell that I didn't really care for as much anymore to help me net extra gems. And one thing that I had that I figured could potentially sell for a decent chunk of gems was a very rare dragon that I had. At the time, I had 2 dragons that had 7-digit IDs. So essentially, these were very old dragons that were released or were born during the game's like first year of life. They were from 2014. They had very, very low digits, and they were both Gen 1 and unbred. So I knew that they would both be very valuable. And I had 2 of them, and one of them I liked significantly more than the other, so I plopped the other one on auction house for another 10,000 gems. And to my surprise, that dragon sold within like 24 hours. I was very amused by it because I remember that night that I plopped that dragon onto the auction house, I was talking in a Discord server with other people who play Flight Rising. I was like, hey guys, wish me luck. I'm about to sell my 7-digit unbred G1. Wish me luck that this sells quickly. And I plopped it on the auction house. I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up, I checked auction house, and bam, 10,000 gems that I got overnight. So then at that point, I had around 20,000 gems, give or take. I had bought a handful of things at that point because while I had for the most part been saving everything I was getting, there were a handful of times, specifically the Thorntail release, that I decide to splurge a little bit and buy something for myself. However, as we were coming upon Night of the Nocturne, I realized I had a specific goal in mind, which was that I really wanted to try to get this done by Night of the Nocturne, because as time was going on, I was finding I was becoming very, burnt out from this process. I was playing a lot of Flight Rising and not really getting much reward from it because I would just play it and get money and then store it in my vault, and I was like, I really want to get a dragon right now or something, because I'm just saving and saving and saving and not really getting the reward from that saving, if that makes sense. So I was at a point where I was like, I want to get this done by Night of the Nocturne because I have other things that I want to do on this game. Which leads me into discussing Night of the Nocturne itself, because I don't think I've ever received so much dragon money in one singular month up until this point. So it all started not with Flight Rising, but actually with a different pet site game called Chicken Smoothie. I'm not super active on Chicken Smoothie, so I'm not 100% sure in what the event is called, but during the month of December, they will re-release all of their old retired pets, and you have a chance of pulling really, really, really old rare pets that are very valuable on that website during one day out of the month. And I was there during that one day where the very valuable pets were being re-released, and I got incredibly lucky and got a very sought-after pet that would be sold for 5,000 gems of Flight Rising currency. And then, for a particular close species that I'm a part of, during the month of December, they were handing out make-your-own slots for their species, 2 of them. And they were make-your-own slots that weren't locked to your account. You were free to do whatever you wanted with them. And I saw on their Discord server, somebody was looking to buy make-your-own slots for the species with Flight Rising gems. 6,000 gems per slot. So I'm staring at this and being there's no way. There's got to be a catch for this. And at first I was thinking it was going to be that Flight Rising disallows cross-site trading between games that aren't other pet sims. But then I also remember that Flight Rising is completely okay with character trades, and I thought maybe a make-your-own slot would fall more into that category, so I did a little bit of research, and I went onto the Flight Rising forums to see if there was any history of people selling make-your-own slots for Flight Rising gems, and I saw there were quite a few listings of people selling make-your-own slots for Flight Rising gems, and it was not something that was ever, struck down by the moderators. So after seeing that this was the type of trade that had been performed in the past and no one had ever attempted stopping it or said anything negative about it, I thought, hey, I have 2 make-your-own slots that are worth 6,000 gems, and there's someone looking to buy them, so yeah. Long story short, I went from having 20,000 gems to selling a rare pet on Chicken Smoothie, netting me a total of 25,000 gems. And then with the sale of the 2 make-your-own slots, I ended up with 37,000 gems. And this was not including the money I actually made from Night of the Nocturne. To be fair, at this point, I had not spent a whole ton of money on my dragon projects, and I had a bunch of unfinished projects, and since I received so much extra money that I wasn't expecting to get, I spent a little bit of it to finish those remaining dragon projects. So by the time that was done, I had 35,000 gems from all of this. But still, this was a good chunk of money. So after my acquisition of these 35,000 gems, I decided to really lock in with Night of the Nocturne. I did some math and I figured out, okay, if I can get 1,000 strange chests and sell them for at least 15 gems each, that will land me with 15,000 gems. Plus the 35,000 gems would equal 50,000 gems, which was in range of the lowest price that I've seen Fire Sprite be sold for in recent days. So, with this new acquisition of gems really helping with that feeling of burnout I had from earlier, I jumped on to the familiar bonding page because that's my preferred way of getting strange chests during Night of the Nocturne, and I just hacked away at all the familiars, trying to make sure I bonded with each and every one every single day, and I, after a lot of time on it, I managed to get 1,000 strange chests. I was over the moon after so much time on this game trying to get this familiar. I finally was in range of the price tag that would be needed to make an offer that I could actually see being accepted for this familiar. I was so excited. So then finally, after months of saving, I went to the auction house and I began the process of one, selling all my strange chests, and two, looking through the available listings on the auction house for Fire Sprite and was starting to draft up a message to who had the lowest auction house on Fire Sprite, hoping to make my offer of 50,000 gems and hoping that they would either accept it or if they didn't, they would be willing to hold it for me while I make the remaining however much gem they would want. And by a twist of fate, as I was looking through the Fire Sprite listings, I saw a new listing for Fire Sprite that had not been there before. That was now the newest, lowest auction house listing for Fire Sprite. And this listing had Fire Sprite for 6,000 gems. Not 60,000 gems. 6,000 gems. $60 of in-game currency. Which I easily had, so I went to my vault faster than I think I ever had before, quickly grabbed 6,000 gems, and bought the Fire Sprite. I was freaking out for the rest of the night. I don't think I could recreate the reaction I had when this happened, but I was over the moon. I was running around in circles. I was jumping for joy, because not only did I get Fire Sprite, but I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it. So I yeeted my Fire Sprite at Cinder, who is the dragon I am drawing in this video, because I need to spoil her even more than I already have. And I took my newly acquired small flight rising fortune and bought a dragon from Roundsy's Raffle Roulette that was looking to be rehomed, because that was my other really big flight rising dream. And with that, I can finally say that the Fire Sprite saga has come to an end. Now I am looking to get a 6-digit dragon because I have no hobbies. Anyway, so the drawing in this video is of my Flight Rising character named Cinder, who, despite her name, is not a Sona. She is a dragon who has become my, Mafia game tracker dragon, because I play Mafia on Flight Rising. And she is based on the first roll card I ever got for the first game I ever got, because I thought it was a very fun opportunity to make a pun, because the name of the roll was Firebug, so I thought it would be very, very, very funny if I took that word very literally and made a character who was a bug, who is being set on fire, because I'm funny, but not really. Along with that, the drawing is also slightly inspired, or actually very inspired, by my favorite song. The song is Cover My Traces by Reach. Anyway, that happened because I was struggling to come up with ideas for drawings, so my friend suggested that I look up January art prompts. And so one of the January art prompts for the one that I looked up was song. And since my favorite song is about committing arson, and I felt like drawing my favorite dragon character who now had my favorite sprite in the game, I figured, hey, this seems like a really good opportunity to make a really fun drawing. So anyway, yeah. I hope you'll have a great week. And make sure you subscribe to prevent grease fires, or maybe not prevent them this week, because I'm literally drawing my arsonist OC right now. But okay, whatever. Have a great week. Goodbye.